Hey guys, and welcome back to another video, and today we're gonna talk about openings. We all know that chess players like learning new openings and studying opening lines to get an advantage right from the start, but there's a proper way on how to do that. Just memorizing the moves is not going to be effective in the long run because you're gonna probably forget those moves, but you have to try to understand the main ideas and purposes behind the moves. And all the openings in chess have just one thing in common. They are looking for three things and solving these three problems, which is central control, development of the pieces, and king safety. So basically all you want to do in the opening is to control the center, develop your pieces, and put your king into safety by specially castling it. That's the most obvious idea. So if we think that way, it's easier to understand why people play, for example, e4 or d4 if they're playing white as move 1, because this is a move that is going to control the center. You're going to push one of your pawns and occupy a central square, and then you're going to make your bishop and your queen more active on these diagonals, right? That's why we push e4, and same goes for pushing d4. You're going to make this bishop more happy. The queen has some prospect here, but the idea is to control central squares. So that's why we play either e4 or d4 on move 1 more often than not, right? And our opponent knows that our goal, if we had two moves to play, is to put the two pawns, right, in the center. Of course, there are other moves, such as the birds, the English, that are not exactly putting a pawn in the central squares, but those are not the most popular moves. Even the knight here is not the most popular. The most popular moves are putting one of the two pawns in the central squares, either the e pawn or the d pawn. And that's why they are the most popular moves, right? And if we had two moves, we would probably do this. We would probably put the two pawns in the center of the board. So our opponent knows that our next move would probably be this one if they allow that. So that's what usually people do if they don't play anything that is substantial, if they play like a silly h6, a6, for example. If black does that, what white's probably going to do is they're going to push another pawn to the center of the board and occupy the center and have central control, and then develop the pieces, castle, do something like that. So knowing that, black is going to try to stop that. That's what explains the most popular defenses from black. For example, if we push this pawn, we are preventing white from developing, from pushing the d pawn to the center, because we now control this square and we cannot simply push this pawn. We can do that, but because our queen is going to be supporting, but it's discouraged, right? So when black plays this, we are discouraged to play this because this pawn can take, and if we take with the queen, this knight comes with tempo on our queen that will be here in the center, right? All of this is playable to a certain extent, but it's not the most popular lines. It's not the strongest line. And the same goes for the Sicilian defense, which is the same thing. But instead of putting a central pawn here, they are putting a flank pawn. The c pawn is being pushed to prevent d4. In some lines, for example, the Smith-Morra gambit, we're going to play d4 anyway, inviting black to take, and then we offer yet another pawn, offering another pawn to develop the knight and have a lot of compensation for the pawn, which is a fast, quick development and a very strong attack with initiative. So that's why we understand now why we don't do this, right? And the same thing goes for the other moves. So when black plays this, what we do is, most of the times, develop the knight to f3, and we are attacking this pawn now, threatening to take it and then develop our pawn here to the central square, or just develop the pawn, and when they take, we just take back because we control this square now. And what black does most of the time is just put this knight here, and it's not just because. The reason is now they are protecting this pawn that was being attacked. Okay, so that's why they developed the knight here. So that explains, for example, the Ruy Lopez, which is one of the most popular chess moves, which is developing this bishop, attacking the knight that is protecting this pawn. So we are threatening to just eliminate this defender and then capture this pawn in the center. And not only that, we developed 2 pieces and we are ready to castle. So we are trying to achieve all the goals from the opening, which are controlling of the center, central control, developing pieces, and put the king to safety. So that's why we play those moves. Black most of the times is going to challenge this bishop, asking the question like, would you like to take the knight or go back? So there's this exchange variation where we take this knight, trying to eliminate the defender of this pawn, or we just drop back, keeping the tension. And there are many other moves that can be played here. What I like to play in this position is the Scotch game, which is pushing the pawn to d4 right away. And we can do that because if black takes, we can recapture with the knight. And if they take with the knight, we can just recapture with the queen. And there is no knight here to develop with tempo to our queen. So this is something that happens a lot. Weaker players tend to capture this knight, and then we just take back with the queen, but other players might just develop the knight or come here or here. And most common variation is this one. And then from here, we have many other options, right? We can play the other variation, which I have a video about, or we can just play a classical variation with this bishop right here, defending the knight. So all the moves have a purpose. We are trying to control the center, right, with our pawns, having a pawn in the center, develop our pieces, castle, either king side or queen side, but that's the main idea. So in a position like this, we could try to, for example, attack this bishop and make it move again, or we can just develop a bishop here. We are developing one of the pieces, defending one of our other pieces, and having central control, development of pieces, trying to put our king into safety later on. So that's the reason behind those moves. Same goes for other defenses. For example, the French defense, which is my favorite against e4. We are preparing here. When we play e6, we're preparing this move, d5. So we are going to be attacking this pawn. And in case they capture here, we just have a pawn ready to recapture. And that's what happens most of the time. So white has a big center. Now we counterattack the center. And as they take, we can take back. But of course, white doesn't have to do that. White can go for advanced variation. They can go for moves to defend the pawn here. And all of those lines are possible. What happens is that we know the reason why we play those moves. We're not just repeating moves that we memorized. The same goes for the Caro-Kann. Caro-Kann has a similar approach. We are preparing this move, and just in case white takes, here we just recapture back. And instead of using this central pawn, we're using the C pawn, and we're gonna have this file open. A lot of people prefer this opening because it doesn't block the bishop here, just like the French does, right? There are some other moves. For example, you can challenge the center right away, and that's, for example, the Scandinavian. And here, white also already has to consider what to do. You know, take this pawn, maybe defend this pawn, or ignore completely and play something like this. Offer this pawn as a sort of gambit or something, or even push the pawn. What are you going to do? It's a difficult question to answer, and you have to know more or less the reason behind your moves so you understand why people play the moves they play. Even this move right here, for example, which is the Lekins defense, more often than not, we're going to push and challenge this knight, but the idea is they are trying to threaten this pawn, which doesn't work much. I don't like this opening very much, but what I usually play against it is just defending the pawn and going for like a 4-knight Scotch later on. But there are multiple ways to play against this. So you have to know the reasons why you play your moves. And the same goes for d4. Whenever you play this move, your opponent might consider counterattacking it by playing a similar move, having a symmetrical position and symmetrical pawn structure. They don't know yet if you're going to go for like a London system or a Queen's Gambit or anything different from that. So it's hard for black to exactly decide what to do. So more often than not, they're just going to reply by, playing some moves that are not compromising yet to what their plan is probably going to be in combating your opening. So That's why we shouldn't just memorize moves, and the right way to study is to study the reason why we play those moves, the reason behind those moves, and why do we play them, not only memorizing the lines. So remember, in the opening, you have to go for these 3 points, which is central control, development of pieces, and king safety. And if you're going for that, you're gonna be good no matter what. So if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe to the channel for more. And as always, I see you guys in the next one.